Shadows where the truth hides deep. Echoes of the lost and the secrets they keep. Cold cases burn in the back of your mind. We dig through the dark, 1, 2 at a time. This ain't fiction, this is blood, this is truth. 12-gauge investigative justice uncaged. We ask the questions that you scared to say, shining a light where the guilty pray from killers.
This is 12-gauge investigative. Let's jump in.
We're built for the case. Just getting started. Justice is just getting started. 12-gauge investigative. We don't miss.
All right. Good morning. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. If you don't have your father today, I hope that, sending good vibes your way for your thoughts and your well-being, because, a lot of people don't have their fathers anymore. And, I just got off the phone with mine. So if you don't have your father today, maybe your husband or your boyfriend had been able to take the place. Is it Father's Day today? I thought it was today. Is it next weekend? Let me look at the calendar. Let me be a week early. What the hell? Hold on, Aquarius. Hold on, Aquarius. I thought it was today, for real. Where are we? June. Let me find out it's next weekend. You're right. It's the 15th. My bad, y'all. My bad. Happy early Father's Day. Yeah, it is next Sunday. I just made a boo-boo. I called and woke my dad up. He's like, it's Father's Day? I was like, yeah. My goodness. Sorry about the intro, guys. Well, for next week, I guess, we'll be early. Better early than late, right? Better early than late. Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, Aquarius. I called him anyways. We're gonna go to dinner tomorrow. I said, everybody's gonna be packing them restaurants today, so let's get on it tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, okay, let's do that. He's like, I'm going back to bed. Me and your mom are just gonna kind of lay around today, take it easy. I'm like, all right. Whatever works for y'all. But as people come on in here, I hope that you're having a wonderful Sunday anyways. Sunday's a beautiful day. It's the end of the week technically, and tomorrow's Monday and we start it all over again. Well, next week I'm going to be officially on call, so y'all know how that goes for me. It's quite stressful. I never really sleep next week. And also next week is going to be a full moon. So for those of you that get that little werewolf in your step when there's a full moon, do know it's on its way. So, well, happy anniversary to Leslie and Billy. Let's give them a happy anniversary. Happy anniversary. How many years, Leslie? How many years? If you don't want to put that, that's fine. But, you know, 12 being nosy. First of all, I want to start off with, even though we're going to start off with the triad, I want to start off with some local state news. They believe that there's an active serial killer here in Texas. I mean, because as y'all have known, I've reported this before, and I've actually had a member or a family member of one of the deceased actually come up on my panel before, and it's a real deal. So they seem to be pushing it under the rug a little bit, and as we've heard, it's not a priority for a lot of the law enforcement down in Austin, Texas. So happy 15 years, Leslie and Billy. Happy anniversary. Aquarius says, I've been with my husband 28 years. That's awesome, Leslie. If you guys don't drink coffee and you like a little bit of pep in your step, you might try the Celsius watermelon. I usually don't like sparkling drinks, but it's so good that I had to order me some from Amazon. I hope they don't search my order history. They'll see that I love Celsius. You know what I mean? Well, anyway, let's start this off. I'm all over the place. I'm trying to get situated. I hope that you in the chat are keeping up. If you're watching on the sidelines, good morning. It's not Father's Day as I originally thought. But let's get on with the local state news. Here we go.
All right, Corporal Jose Mendez, that's JoseMendez with the Austin Police Department Public Information Office. So early this morning, we did have a male individual recovered from the water here on Lady Bird Lake. Our hearts go out to the victim, family, friends, and all those that will be affected by this tragedy. This is a tragic and unfortunate situation, and we're trying to figure out why this took place and what happened. Safety here in Austin will continue to be our #1 priority, and we will do whatever we can to figure out why this happened and what we can do from preventing anything like this from happening again. I will say this past Sunday at approximately 7 p.m., we did have a family paddleboarding here on Lady Bird Lake. At some point during their paddleboarding session, one of the individuals was seen from their family. That family reported this incident to us. APD, EMS, AFD all responded to the scene here, and unfortunately, their search yielded negative results. They could not find the individual at the time that it was reported. Today, at around 7 a.m. this morning, we did have a caller call 911 stating they observed a body floating in the water of Lady Bird Lake here near Riverside and Lamar. Here.
So that is terrible. This is not another drunken night off Rainy Street. Actually, somebody was paddleboarding and somebody fell overboard. And God, that's terrible. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Can you imagine that happening to you and your family members? You're out paddling, and then all of a sudden one of the family members goes under, and you don't have any idea what happened, and then a couple days later. So this one's different than the other one. The other ones have been where the individual had been found um, deceased fairly early. This one was 2 days, so I don't think it's the same type thing. But as far as I don't know why they're pushing this as a serial killer for this one, but the other ones, I can't imagine. As you know, there's been over 38 bodies pulled from this lake. 38. This one obviously was not one of the mysterious ones, but the other ones have been, you know, without any kind of logical understanding from the police. You know, they just call it a accidental drowning or something like that. And that's awful. That is awful. You know, to have that happen to a family member, our condolences go out to the family. Um, you know, the others that were found in this lake, there's a street called Rainy Street, and I'm not going to go all through that because I have another presentation set up. But you guys know that have been following this channel and have heard about Rainy Street. Um, there's been rumors of bartenders overserving or possibly even slipping stuff in the drink so that the individuals that are found in the lake have been acting weird. They're possibly been picked up by Uber drivers that robbed them. I mean, there's been ties to like Atlanta and all along the southern area of the country. You know, there's been a lot of these happening in Houston, Chicago. There's been a lot of the same type scenarios, and for a long time they were linking this to a band of criminals that they dubbed smiley face killers. I don't believe that this has anything to do with that, but like I said, I could be wrong. I mean, it's just terrible to know that another body had been pulled from that lake. I wouldn't get on that lake for nothing. I mean, it looks murky. It looks, as we saw that diving team that time go underwater and look for the vehicles and stuff like that. It's murky. It's dark. There's a lot of undergrowth. I could see where somebody could fall overboard and get tangled up in some of the underbrush in the water and eventually drown. I mean, but the ones that they found before this story right here, they're mostly along the shore, and they're usually found floating with on their backs. They're not on their usually like when somebody drowns, they're on their front. They come up like that. But let's continue on.
Here at the Butler Hike and Bike Trail. Right now we are trying to determine if the individual that we have this morning is the same individual that went missing Sunday evening. Again, this is a tragic and unfortunate situation, and we grieve with the family at this moment. We're trying to make positive identification on this individual that we have so that we can report back to the family if that's the case. Right now, we have our missing persons unit on scene. We have our medical examiner's office. We have our crime scene specialists. And they were trying to determine what took place. When APD responded this morning, they were able to successfully recover the individual from the lake. And like I said, we're trying to go through the notification process, the identification process, and we'll wait on the medical examiner's office to kind of give us their ultimate determination.
I tell you, there's stuff that happens every day in our country, and a lot of it's reported, a lot of it is not. And, that's why we always have to be vigilant to our surroundings because we just never know. You just never know. One of my mods let me know that they caught the Ozark sheriff. They caught him a couple days ago, but Travis Decker is still on the run. They're still looking for him, and supposedly he's ended up in Idaho, as per some of the report that I've been given. Which, if you live in anywhere in the Idaho area, please be on the lookout for this individual. As far as being armed and dangerous, the last that I heard is he may not be armed, but he's definitely dangerous. He took out um, three of his children, little bitty girls, 5, 9, and 7, I think their ages were. So be on the lookout for Travis Decker if you're in the Idaho area. So, like I said, it's always a tragedy whenever somebody goes missing, somebody dies, somebody drowns, somebody gets killed. It's a tragedy for the families left behind. Hello, Nina. How you doing? I saw your live this morning. I was trying to follow along. It sounds like you were having a little bit of trouble, but you're getting it. You're getting it. I don't know if you'd like to come up on panel and be the passenger, or you're cool staying in the chat. Just let me know either way. um, I wanted to talk about the dark triad because I talked about it. I don't remember if it was yesterday in the first video that I did live or the second one, but I talked about it, I believe, in the first one. And I did a video with Ginger Peoples, and we were discussing it, and I went into detail about it. So if you guys who have never understood or ever seen what the dark triad is, I'd like to educate the audience a little bit about it because it has a lot to do with what we talk about in the Idaho 4 case, a lot of it. Um, and it has a lot to do with a lot of other cases that we talk about. And one thing that I want you to know, even though I talk about the Idaho 4 case, this goes universal. This goes universal. Um, and we are always on the lookout to learn different things as far as how we can protect ourselves from potential perpetrators in the near future, how we can protect ourselves in the present. And happy Sunday, YouTube bad actors. Glad to see you again. Glad that you're here. Nina, I'll put the link up there if you want to come up. If you don't, understand. I'd like for you to come up, but if you don't want to, that's cool. Like I said, the individual on panel with me was Ginger Peoples. She was a sub. Um, I don't know if she still is. I haven't seen her in the chat in a long time. So if you're if you're in if you're still a sub, Ginger, thank you for being on the panel with me and it's live. So here we go.
Articulate like dreams, even if
Amicus, I see you up here. You need hold on a second for the people that are in here.
So, what's the difference? Narcissists tend to have a large sense of self as they feel entitled and superior to those around them. Machiavellianism, on the other hand, tends to be more manipulative and selfish. Psychopaths are more insensitive as they lack empathy for others and act without thinking. They are all associated with varying degrees of deception, questionable morals, and self-interest, but what they do have in common is disagreeableness. It's also thought that there is a relatively high genetic component to all three personality traits. Interesting.
So as I was talking about last night or yesterday morning, I get it all confused. It's starting to run together. I'm doing so many. Have any of you ever been exposed to a narcissist? Do you understand what the narcissist entails with the behaviors that they exhibit? If you do, please type those in the chat. Please type what kind of behaviors from a narcissist that you've been exposed to. Do you know what an individual who is a antisocial individual? They have psychopathy. Um, do you know what an individual who has Machiavellianism dispels as well? So type those in the chat if you understand what this is all about.
Psychopathy and Machiavellianism are more closely related to each other than narcissism, possibly because narcissism is the only one that can grow from a feeling of insecurity. What about sociopaths? It's easy to confuse psychopaths and sociopaths, so you might be wondering, why aren't sociopaths included in this list? Both are listed as antisocial personality disorders in severe forms, and both share a lack of moral judgment and lack of empathy. There are, however, a few things that distinguish the two. Psychopaths are likely to be pathological liars, and they rarely feel guilt. They do whatever they have to benefit themselves. They're known to be fearless and often good at mimicking behaviors to hide their psychopathic traits. Sociopaths, on the other hand,
So, like I was saying last night, I was talking about the actor and the chameleon. I was talking about Brian Koberger, as how he, in my opinion, I believe that he does um, mimic behaviors of normality at times, but also he has the tendency to go into that other realm of the chameleon. We haven't seen that side though. We've seen the teacher's assistant. We've seen the pictures with him with the friends and stuff like this, and he seems to be normal. We've heard that he is friendly. We've heard that he's been nice. We've heard that he's been on a date, with individuals. And whenever he's called on something though, that's when the other person comes to the forefront. We've heard that while he's been teaching, he's targeted females and graded harshly everyone. So that kind of gives you the sense of superiority, the sense of I'm smarter than you, I'm better than you. And it oftentimes people that do this have low self worth or lack of self esteem. They have low self esteem at times because they don't want you to know that you could be a little more superior in thought process or possible any other areas in your existence. I mean, so they want to kind of browbeat you a little bit with their chest out type of stuff, and they want to put you in your place so that well, I'm not going to mess with him or her. You know what I mean? So um, let's continue on.
and tend to have a conscience, even if it's weak. Although they are self-centered, they do care for others more than psychopaths. They're also less skilled at hiding their behavior and act in ways that make self-indulgence and lack of empathy more obvious. Although it's unclear as to why sociopaths are not included in the list, it could be due to how environmental factors are more influential to the cause of sociopathy than genetics. How does someone with one or more of these traits act? According to a 10-year review study, members of the DARK TRIAD have similar behaviors in a variety of social settings. In the workplace, for example, they're likely to fit the trope of an entitled or leader who is able to charm their way to the top, but not.
You two bad actors, would you like to come up on panel? I mean, I know that you have your own show and stuff, but I'd like somebody to come up that's a female, and I take it that you're a female because I've heard your voice. Um, would you like to come up? I asked Nina, and I guess she didn't want to. So if you'd like to come up, I'd like to talk to you. Because you said that you worked with a narcissist, and maybe you could give us a firsthand, um, a firsthand account of that. And if you know anything about what I'm talking about, we can continue to talk about that. Let me put the link again. So if you'd like to come up, you don't have to show your face. You just come up and talk to me just like you do on your streams. So there's the link. And hopefully one of you comes up and talks to me. Like what I was talking about, though, as far as the sociopath, the antisocial personality disorder, the the narcissist, all these things, as we've found out when we're dealing with killers or people that abduct people, or okay, that's fine. Maybe another time. What we found out is they have a very self-serving mentality. Look at some of the people that we've identified as being very self-serving. Israel Keys, he had a family. He had all these things going for him, but he could not let go of that other side of him. He was one of the, in my opinion, he was one of the worst. Him and BTK, I think those two were two of the worst killers that I've ever heard of. I mean, not minimizing any of the others because they were just as tragic, and there's some that aren't as famous, but they did a lot of damage to society. But think about having that one side of you that wants to fit in with your environment. You go to work, you're friendly, you're nice, you're kind of laid back. You don't exhibit those type of behaviors that would put the camera on you, the limelight, everything. You don't exhibit those. But then after hours, it's almost like you go looking to become that other person. That person who really is you. You're hiding from the world behind a mask of normality. And that's what's so difficult when we're talking about killers, rapists, traffickers, any of this stuff. They could be anybody in our society and we really wouldn't know it. You know? Yeah, be careful on your trip. And we wouldn't know it. It's kind of like we always hear, well, they were so good together. Kind of like the Chris Watts case. He was such a doting husband. He was so good to her. He was so good to the kids. But look what Chris Watts did. He took out his two little girls and his pregnant wife. We always hear they're such good people, or they're so quiet. I would never have thought that this individual could have the capacity to do this. Isn't that what we always hear, chat? Isn't that what we always um some of the dialect that we hear from after the fact, after the murders, after the abductions, after all this stuff. But yet, this Travis Decker, we know that this guy is a bad dude from jump. There's been no doubt about that, you know? And somebody asked me, do you believe that anybody had capacity to be this person? They asked me that last night. And I said, well, I believe that, we all have that capability of being that person because we just don't know who we're dealing with. We really don't. I mean, because there's what was the preacher and his wife? The preacher that was having the affair on his wife and she supposedly committed suicide out by the lake or by the river. Um, I can't think of her name. But look at that case. The preacher, his wife, they represented in the community to be loving, caring, loving each other, and he was having an affair. J.P. Miller, thank you. Yeah, I mean, look at that case. I don't know if he had anything to do with her suicide, but we just never know. Nina said, I left a 17-year relationship with someone with borderline personality and narcissist. It was terrible. Yeah, it is terrible. And all these crimes that we hear about, we're wondering, well, how did that individual get to that point? How did they get to that point? If you have a loving husband, if you have a loving boyfriend, or you found the one, I tip my hat to you if I was wearing one because there are some good people in this world. I'm not trying to say that everybody is a narcissist or everybody has the capability of being, you know, on a wanted poster. I'm just saying that, sometimes we don't know who we're with until it's too late. And some of these stories that we hear of, um, the one thing that's really prevalent right now is relationship murders. They break up, and then all of a sudden, bam, they kill their significant other, their ex. You know, so you just don't know what someone is made up of until it's too late sometimes. And let me continue on with this.
Not make genuine connections with the people around them. In education, cheating and plagiarism are predictable. This is more associated with psychopathy and Machiavellianism. Other than their displays of social entitlement, their behaviors differ more when it comes to interacting with others. Psychopaths tend to give negative first impressions as they want to appear to be intimidating. They also have an uncanny ability to mimic the behavior of those around them. People with
Did you hear that?
Machiavellianism,
Did you
along
hear that right there? They have the capability of mimicking behavior of those around them. Let me play that again for you. Hold on. The Machiavellian.
their way to the top, but not make genuine connections with the people around them. In education, cheating and plagiarism are predictable. This is more associated with psychopathy and Machiavellianism. Other than their displays of social entitlement, their behaviors differ more when it comes to interacting with others. Psychopaths tend to give negative first impressions as they want to appear to be intimidating. They also have
Right there. They want to appear intimidating. What are some of the Can you put some of the adjectives in the chat on since we talk about Mr. Koberger all the time, can you put some of the adjectives that we've heard about him that would present an intimidating factor at first meeting with this guy? Can y'all put that in the chat? Some of the adjectives that you've heard associated with Mr. Koberger at first glance. Or, some of the others that I've mentioned. What are some of the adjectives that you hear of some of these people that have been described? What type of person did they put off at first impression? I know you know these. Here's another one. Let me continue on with this. Pay attention to this part too.
an uncanny ability to mimic the behavior of those around them to blend in. People with Machiavellianism, along with psychopaths, tend to come off quite cynical and morally suspicious. Narcissists, interestingly, have a skewed sense of self and tend to view themselves as far better leaders and far more empathetic than they actually come off as. Where do we go from here? As you've seen, recent research has made it possible to distinguish between
So, superior acting, very good. Psycho, creepy, 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 abrasive, knowing all, misogynistic, very good. Man, you are on it. Yes, all those have been associated with Brian. So if you're looking at some of what we're talking about today, a psychopath would have the ability to blend in with somebody else, meaning that's the actor. You said ugly. um, while the chameleon, hey Walt, good morning. While the chameleon would be the individual that would be the other person. So the sociopath would be the individual that is able to change into possibly being normal, quote unquote. The psychopath, not so much. So there's a reason why Ann Taylor wanted those words to be excluded from the trial. Because if you start digging into those words, it's going to paint a picture based on looking at this person in the courtroom, you're going to be wondering as a jury member, man, that guy sure does look like he could exhibit some of these traits. And there's a reason why all these statements were wanting to be taken from the potential trial. Because who wants to look across the courtroom as you're talking about a psychopath, or you're talking about a sociopath, or you're talking about a narcissist based on testimony, and you're looking at this dude and you're like, wow, I see how this guy could potentially be that. I see how he could be that. And that's why she wanted those words excluded from the potential trial.
Between the dark triad of personality. But what does it mean moving forward? Researchers have started to look into the function of the dark triad in the business world, how these personality traits relate to the ability to maximize profits. Psychiatrists have also looked at how the dark triad are more vulnerable to addiction disorders. There are even studies that look into the relationship between the dark triad and affective disorders such as depression. We hope we were able to help you understand and distinguish the different personalities of the dark triad. If you're interested in learning more on each of these personalities and other videos, let us know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with those who might benefit from it. The references and studies used in this video are added in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Okay.
And I did pin this video.
Okay, instead of playing the rest of that, I'm going to play a little bit of how this person described the dark triad. It was Dr. Drew and an expert named Gillian. Let me go ahead and get to that point because I don't like listening to my own voice on a pre-recorded live. I don't know. It just drives me crazy. And here we go. Do y'all know who Dr. Drew is, right? If any of you are from the MTV generation, Dr. Drew used to be on that channel, and he was one that it was either MTV or VH1, and he was always discussing relationship issues. I used to love listening to him on VH1 or MTV, whichever one of those he was. But in this little area, these two are discussing Brian Koberger. The behavior trait, the mentality, all that. You know, that's what I'm showing here. I'm not trying to convince you that Brian's innocent or that's what it was. Thank you, you two badass actors. I'm gonna put that badass actors on there. Loveline with Adam Carolla. Yes, that was that channel. Thank you, Common Sense. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Glitter, for being in here as well. Common Sense, yes. Thank you for that. Loveline with Adam Carolla. I love that show, man. Guilty, because that's up to you. And it's not, I don't have a dog in the fight. So it doesn't really matter to me whether, you know, at this point, whether he's guilty or whether he's innocent. Because like I've told the chats, you know, because we have individuals that are trying to push the evidence and all this other stuff, and he should be let go because of this, that, and the other. And what I've told the chats is this, and I don't know if you agree with it, but the only way that he could be set free at this point are two ways, or could have been two ways. One way would have been the prosecutor saying, hey, there's not enough evidence to keep going on. We can dismiss the charges against Mr. Koberger and let him free. The other way would have been bail. You know, if the judge would have given him bail and he could have afforded it, then he could have been let free. Or if that changes and they somehow implement bail and he's able to afford it and be let free.
No, I totally get you. That's it, you know, because You're totally right on that.
Okay. Is there anything that you could see that could possibly, at this point in the game, let him go? Like, there's no way that the lawyers can say, you're right about the evidence that's been possibly withheld or the evidence that's been tainted. Um, we need to file a motion to let him go.
Well,
Because at that point, I was talking about how a lot of people on YouTube were saying, well, he just needs to be let go. He just needs to be set free because there's no evidence. Well, I was describing how if that would have been correct, there would have been bail. There would have been, he would have been given the opportunity to be set free, but that didn't happen. And that's been a continuous narrative throughout the years is this is new information, set him free. This is new information, set him free. This is new information, set him free. But you know what? It hasn't happened. So what that tell you about the new information that's been brought forward, that it's not that lucrative to be setting him free. And if it was, he wouldn't be in jail right now. So that's what I was discussing at that point.
like
without somebody
i-
calling the
in
police
a
or
row.
something. Yeah.
Like it was like I thought maybe they were drugged or something, but it was even more sinister. But
Well,
Caleb
they were
probably
they
has
were
some
they were
questions.
intoxicated. I mean, I think these women were intoxicated. Most of the people, I don't know about the roommate, but I definitely, you can see it on camera that Maddie and Kaylee, they were intoxicated. The other two, Zena and Ethan, had been at a party all night. So I think that played a huge role in this, that the victims were intoxicated, and people just do not have a good grasp, and it's understandable, of what a knife attack is actually like. It's not like the movies.
Was this guy at the
where
party too? Is he there?
No, he wasn't. He left his
Oh,
house
okay.
about 15 minutes away at about 2:30, 2:40 in the morning.
Tell us again about the knife attack. So I feel like we have some useful information there.
Yeah. So knife attacks are very lethal, and there's two things that with a knife that can cause problems where people won't fight back. One is, if you get a severe stab wound to the lung, your lung could collapse, to the neck, or these places where your function in life, which is breathing, is disrupted. That's a major blow to a person who's never been injured or never been in a fight before. I mean, you're going from never being in a fight to now you're trying to fight for life. Also, hitting any artery.
So think about that a minute. We've heard countless times, and I know y'all have as well. We've heard, why wasn't there any screaming? Why wasn't there any yelling or any of that stuff? Well, like he said, if one of the initial stab wounds is to the lungs, it's almost like getting punched in the sternum. It takes all your air out. So how are you going to scream with no air? You know what I mean? Y'all get what I'm saying, and you get what he's talking about right now? Because we've heard about that for a long time. How come there wasn't any screaming? Dylan would have heard screaming. She would have heard some kind of commotion. There's a reason why. If, like we've heard from countless people, Tom Ban is one of them. He is a guest sometimes on the panel, but he's a sub, and he discussed he's an ex-Marine, and he discussed being involved. Where he's seen some stabbings, and he stated that a lot of times it's almost like a punch. It's almost like a punch. The individual that's getting stabbed has often referred to the stab as being like a punch. They didn't realize they were being stabbed. So if any of these women didn't understand what was going on, they may have thought, well, I'm just being punched, until the actuality of not being able to breathe, not being able to scream, not being able to exhale like they did a couple seconds ago. That's why it's so violent. That's why this crime was so violent, because you know it just common sense. you have no air, you're not going to be able to scream. It is like a gut punch with a burn. Yes, and listen to what he says as far as being stabbed in the artery, okay? Because I think this is what happened to Ethan, and I believe that this is what happened to Kaylee as well, because that would have been, yeah, they were the one that would have been the one that are not, or what happened to Ethan and Xana. I'm sorry, not Kaylee. I don't think Kaylee got stabbed in the artery. I think she was beaten so severely that it probably, like her dad said, it could have killed her instantly without any of the stab wounds. We've heard that her liver was destroyed. We've heard that, in the liver region, of course, there's the lungs, right? So if you're getting stabbed in the lungs, and the liver, your body's going into shock. How are you going to scream when you don't have any air in you? Does that make sense?
If you don't get a tourniquet on it, you're going to bleed out within a minute at the most. So you're looking at people that woke up or were woken up or didn't wake up. They just a traumatic injury to their body instantly occurred. And this knife that he used is not my pick of knives that I use for anything. It's a old K-bar knife. They don't hold an edge well, so they don't stay sharp, and the point is prone to breaking off. However, it's a big knife, and if you hit somebody full force in the chest with it, there's just not a lot of fight that you can get back with that unless you will something up from inside and want to fight back like an animal. Most people.
Okay. First of all, I got 2 points I want to make, and then I'm going to turn it to you, Ginger.
Okay.
The first point is I put a Rumble video on my community tab that showed a knife attack, a real knife attack, where an individual was sliced in the neck and he bled out instantly. It was like 3 seconds, if that. So if y'all want to go and watch that gore, you're more than welcome to. So the second part is, as far as the K-bar knife, we don't really know if that was the knife used, but based on what he just said about it, it could make sense if that knife was used because he said it dulls quickly. Okay, and this video is a little older, so we do know that it was a K-bar. Glitter, I remember you saying that your dad was a career Marine, and he called me K-bar. My first name is Kim. Yeah, I remember you saying that. Um, Common sense. I don't know how to do it with the iPhone. If you have an iPhone, if any of you have an iPhone and you became a member, if you could type how she could do that. But I think there's a join button underneath the video, or there's that little the little avatar, the little 12 at the bottom right of the of the live. I think you can click on that to become a member as well. I'm not sure. If any of you can walk her through that, that would be great. Because I really don't know. I don't know. But he's talking about how this K-bar knife is capable of doing so much damage. And we know that based on some of the things that we've heard and seen about this knife. And sometimes the tip break off, like with any knife. If you're going to hit bone or something like that, based on how the knife is built, or if it's an old version of the knife, let's say that the knife was used back in the time of the Vietnam War or something, if that was the knife used, or if it was a brand new knife that was ordered, or it was bought at a knife show or anything like that, it has obviously a lot to do with the durability of the knife. So what do you think, Ginger?
Yeah, I'm not really, like an expert on knives, but I did look into a case once. Have you ever heard of oh gosh, I'm just trying to think of the Ketty murders? And
Refresh my memory.
Ketty murders out of California back in like 1984 maybe 1983, where the mom Sue was murdered. She and her son, they were all stabbed to death. Somebody
Okay.
came into the home and stabbed them and used like an actual kitchen knife.
Okay.
The kitchen knife actually like bent. The Ketty murders is a huge like crime. It's very, very popular. I mean, I'm surprised that you haven't heard of that. You said you're in Texas?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, this particular crime happened many years ago. But in regards to the knife, situation, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't really think a K-bar knife was used in this case.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I say that is just, again, it's more like feelings. It's more speculation. It's more,
Well, I'll let Ginger continue on here in a second. But one thing I can tell you about this knife attack that, I'm doing research from all this stuff. A knife attack is very personal. And what I've done research on as far as what they say is the left hand, if the guy is right-handed, the left hand is always left open to either pull the victim toward them or to keep away a punch or something like that. So if they're left-handed, obviously the right hand's going to be right there to pull them close, to stab them, to keep them, close to them because it's a very personal attack. So think about that a little bit. Um, so you're able to control the person that you're attacking. I believe that many times people misconstrue a knife attack as the person is able to run away. The person is able to not be as close as they are to the individual who's attacking them, and that's not always true. Obviously, there are some people that are able to run away, but these individuals in this case seem to have been grabbed and pulled toward them. So, how could you scream if you're being pulled toward the knife attack? Answer me that. You're in a state of shock as is. You were half asleep, probably, and you're being pulled toward the individual who's stabbing you, punching you in the face. There's a lot of chaos going. How could that happen? How could you scream? How could you have the capability to escape this individual that is so much bigger than you? You know what I mean? You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. There's a lot of membership videos in there, and I will be doing members lives later on. So enjoy. Yes, Leslie, and you're scared. And you're scared. You don't realize what's going on. There's somebody punching you in the face nonstop. I'm almost convinced that the individual had the knife like this and was punching Kaylee in the face with the knife in his hand to give him extra leverage to do more pain, more inflict of pain and damage. So think about that a little bit. They say, well, um, how could they not heard anything going on? They did hear stuff going on. Dylan stated she heard what it sounded like Kaylee playing with her dog. Well, to her downstairs, it sounded like there was a bunch of rummaging around. How was she supposed to know, honestly, to be logical here? How was Dylan supposed to know that there was a knife attack going on above her? Would any of you in the chat, any of you that are watching this on replay, would you be able to decipher a knife attack from somebody rummaging around in the room above you? To be logical. I mean, I'm not trying to start drama or anything else like that. I'm just saying, to be logical, could you honestly tell the difference between somebody rummaging around the room, maybe being on the bed, turning, tossing and turning, and a knife attack. Most people cannot decipher the difference, especially if you yourself are in and out of consciousness. I absolutely would not, because I don't know what that would sound like. So I would not have anything to compare it to. Very good. Very good. Yes, because been there. Okay, so you've been there, so you understand the difference, right? He knew he was going in on them at a vulnerable state, drunk, and are passed out. Very true. I love how people who have never been through anything like the horror of that night criticize any reactions, especially that a 20 or 21-year-old. Very true. Very true. I mean, so that has to be very violent and very traumatic for those two that experienced that, and then the two on the second floor that experienced just as much horror.
Like, do you remember when the news came out and they were talking about the dog Buddy that was skinned alive, and the bunny?
No, I don't want to talk about. So that's just a very viciousness. That's just a vicious attack in itself, also. And if you remember, during these times when these things were coming out, we also heard of coyotes being killed and dropped at the doorsteps of the frat houses. The individual had to clean it up. He was, there was a report taken, obviously, or maybe there wasn't, because Moscow obviously doesn't take a lot of reports. But the police were called, and that's no dig at them. Just looking at their, at their police blotter, you can see that no report taken, no report taken. I hope they've gotten better at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I thought that was like, wow. I saw that too with the fraternity kids, and the coyotes. I thought, oh my gosh, that is so incredibly scary. Like,
Yeah.
why would you want to even send, like, your child, to school? You send your child away to school, and things like this happen. It's just, it is mind-boggling to me. I just can't even imagine. Everybody's mind goes one way, especially as parents. You're just,
I believe when I was setting that up, Glitter, I think it means like 65 or more members. Then there's special videos for them, not like they're like they get their own videos or something, or some kind of different type of videos than everybody else. Like I said, this video is older, so some of the stuff that we're talking about is irrelevant at this point, because we found out so much since this video dropped. I just wanted to really get the guy talking about it. I might have it where you can't reach it, kind of like the gun. I believe that if you're using it for hunting purposes, it needs to be strapped in an area where you just can't reach it, like right next to you. If it's under the seat, or if it's in the glove box or something where you have to actually stop to reach it, I think you're okay. But as far as,
okay.
carrying it on your person, I don't think anywhere it's okay to do that. But I could be wrong, because
Right.
I'm not above being wrong, and that's one thing that I pride myself in is, I don't know everything. So, I learn every day from people. As long as it's factual, I'll listen to it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So that's a little bit about the knife, and he was describing a lot of that. So let's get back to the video.
Okay.
People, when they're hit with that much of a trauma to their chest or face, it's going to be the same as if I held you underwater. You're going to struggle, but if I can put some pressure on you, you're going to succumb to whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Jesus. Caleb, any questions?
So think about that. If you're being held underwater, that's what he said. It's like being held underwater because you can't breathe. You're going to succumb to the pressure. You're going to expire. And I believe that that's what people do not really get the point of these knife attacks. They don't understand the severity of the knife attack. They think that it's just like a movie. Like in the movie, you can take a couple of knife attacks and you're still alive. You know, you can take a lot of beatings and you still are able to fight off the killer and go and kill them later on in the movies. And I've heard a lot of people reference movies whenever they talk about these crimes, and this crime especially. And that's no dig at Jeff, but I've heard other people talk about movies. This isn't a movie. This isn't a game. These people were murdered viciously by a K-bar knife in the middle of the night while they were sleeping after they came home from having a good time. They didn't know that their lives were about to be over. They had gathered in Kaylee's room at 2 in the morning, discussing probably the night, laughing, joking, talking about what was going on, maybe even what was going to happen the next morning. You know, if they were going to get up for breakfast or any of that stuff, whatever. Regardless, that doesn't mean anything. But what I'm trying to use that as an example is they were just living their lives and they were viciously attacked in the middle of the night. And for people to not validate, um, not validate that at all, the severity of being killed in the middle of the night while you're just living your life, and to make mockery of this crime, it's just horrendous. It's horrendous to say that, you know, they could have done this, they could have done that, they would have been saved, they would have been, you know, they should have done this, they should have done that. The roommate could have called 911 sooner, they would have been saved. But the reality is, in my opinion, that the surviving roommates had no clue of the severity of what was going on until the next morning when everything started to accumulate. And they did call 911. They called somebody over to come and sweep the house to make sure that the individual that was seen was no longer there. But to sit there and attack the roommates, the surviving roommates, of what should have been done, what could have been done, just because you know hindsight 2020, just because you're able to be on these platforms and see the documents and see this crime unfold, does not mean that you would have handled it the same way. There's a lot of people that said, I would have got up, I would have took care of my family, I would have done this, I would have done that. But you have to understand, these surviving roommates, these other 4 people were not their family. They were their roommates. And no matter what your impression is of this, I've had roommates where I really didn't care about them as much as family members. I lived in a dorm with 3 other people, and we shared kind of like this stuff. We were cool, we got drunk together, all that stuff, but we weren't family. We weren't family. Would I have tried to intervene on something on their behalf if I knew something violent was happening? Of course, but that's subjective as well to say you would have known something was happening. You get what I'm saying? You would have known. It's not one of those things to say, well, you don't know. Well, we can sit back and say, well, they should have known. They should have done this. They should have done that. Based on what? None of us were there that night to be able to even say that they knew anything was going on to even react in that aspect. Does this make sense to any of you in the chat? Or am I off key there? You know, am I off key? Should they have reacted differently in your mindset? Did they fail their roommates? Because a lot of people do believe that they failed them. that they would still be alive if they would have called 911. What do y'all believe? Do you believe that they failed them, or do you believe that they really didn't know what was going on? Let me know what you think in the chat, because these are some serious questions, because there's a lot of people that have been on these surviving roommates for a long time. No one knows how they would react until experience it. Exactly. You said you were stabbed in the calf. I can't imagine being stabbed in the areas they were stabbed. Common sense says 7-inch blades. To be honest, have you ever heard Obi describe how it felt when she was attacked and stabbed? I've heard a story, but I don't remember if she said the details. I don't know who Obi is. Can you type out the name in the chat? That way I can kind of get a little more understanding of who you're talking about, Glitter. Because, being stabbed, my dad was stabbed when he was younger. He was robbed. And, he's always stated he really didn't remember a lot. That it happened so fast that he didn't remember what was going on. He said all he remembers is a burning pain after a while. He said when he was being stabbed, he didn't really understand that he had been stabbed, and he had been stabbed in the side about 3 times. And he said all he remembers really is not being able to breathe, and he went down. And he said he didn't remember anything else. He survived it, but can you imagine taking the wind right out of you and not being able to scream, not being able to say help me, not being able to say any of that? It amazes me how people can have that mentality to say, well, she should have heard screaming. She should have heard the ruckus going on. She should have heard something. If not with the 2 above her, she should have heard Xana screaming. Well, we know now that Xana was whimpering and crying, according to the documents. And that's all I have to go on, because I can't say that I know what Xana would have done, what Xana could have done, what the capacity of where Xana's mindset was. Was she half asleep as well? Was she totally ambushed and had no clue what was going on? Because to be able to say, well, Xana was this and Xana was that, and Xana could have done this and Xana could have done that, you're putting everybody in a box. It's like everybody who has ever played soccer or been a gymnast or softball or whatever, then they have the capability to react the same way. That's very closed-minded. Trauma surgeon said if he had an operating room inside the house, they couldn't have saved them. I remember hearing that. I just sent a message to someone I know who was actually attacked and stabbed multiple times. If she's not busy and gets back to me, she would probably come in here and explain. Yeah, she's more than welcome to be on panel as well. That was for YouTube Bad Actors. And it's Oblivious Benson. Okay, thank you for that. Nina says she didn't scream. I'm looking for the other part that has the more of the discussion about the triad versus just me and Ginger talking about it, because that is more informative than this video. I actually picked the wrong one. I saw it last night and I was going to play that one, but I didn't. So I'm going to find this one, and then we're going to hear a lot more from these two. But think about how harshly the surviving victims have been treated. Because People assume that the victims could have been saved had 911 been called. And like Nina just said, a trauma surgeon stated that he could have been in the room with them and they wouldn't have been saved. But people don't want to believe that stabbings, this violence was that intense. Because if it's that intense, that means that the person who is in custody right now, then they have to change their mentality about him. Because if they actually have the right person, then instead of defending him and everything that they said about him potentially not being the one, they would have to take it back. After saying all this time that there's no way that this person could have done such a thing. Well, we all know that there's capability of anyone doing these type of things. Does that make sense to you guys? And I'm looking for that other video because I want to show that other video is a lot better than this one. I've always been intrigued by the stabbing aspect, and that's why I've done so many on my page about knife wounds and stuff like that, because to me, I've never believed that it wasn't vicious. I've always believed that it's always been a vicious crime scene. And people state, well, if it was so vicious, where was the blood? How come they didn't talk about the blood on the 911 call? Do you really believe that Hunter and the people that were on that 911 call, I want you to think a little bit right here. I want you to use your brain a little bit. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm really not. You're free to believe as you want. But think about this. When you walk in and you see Xana and Ethan, two people who you were closest to, your mind is not going to be fixated on the blood. It's going to be fixated on am I seeing what I really think I'm seeing? In my opinion, that's how it would be going down. Am I seeing the people who I love and care about, who I'm close to, actually dead? It's kind of like when you go visit somebody who has died from natural causes and they're in the coffin. You actually get to see them. How many of you have ever looked at these loved ones and almost said, hey, they're still breathing? Because your brain doesn't want to assimilate that this person is actually dead. In your mind, you can still see their chest rising up and down. Let me know if I'm wrong. If you've never had this happen, then maybe it's just me. But I've actually been multiple times in front of a coffin of my loved ones and seen their chest rising up and down. Because your brain doesn't want to go to that worst case scenario, because the finality and the gruesomeness of how this went down, you would shut down and maybe never come out of that. Because there's been people that have experienced such trauma by being exposed to people being murdered in front of them, that have had years of trauma therapy, who have not been able to come out of that because it's been so severe. And if you've never seen anybody die in front of you, or been in front of somebody that's passing away by a gunshot wound, by a knifing, by any of this, by car wreck, then you really don't know what it's like to be there. You don't know. And that's okay. But also at the same time, don't try to defend something that you don't know about. That makes you look ignorant. It makes you look like you're just relaying something that everybody else is saying because you don't want to be the different person and question this really deeper than it is. And that's what I hear all the time too, is like, we should ask questions, we should ask questions. But what questions are really being asked? Are the real questions being asked? Are you really asking the questions, searching for answers, or are you trying to make this not as violent as it was? You get what I'm saying? Talk to me in the chat if you really do. Let me get some of these comments up here, because there are some good comments coming. This one says, I don't know how I would react. I was punched in the face before and totally did not react the way I thought I would. Fact is, I was in shock. I didn't even cry. I mean, they did say there was blood in the chair where he sat. Yes. Everything that your mind would first try to protect you from what you're seeing, so it would be confusion and not comprehending what you're saying at first, I'm sure. Exactly. Exactly. When I saw my dad in the coffin, my mind really couldn't put two and two together. He didn't look like him. He looked like a wax figure to me, but I knew it was him. I had zero control over my emotions. Your brain protects you from seeing what you're actually seeing. Exactly. I've even checked for a pulse and felt my own and just knew it was theirs. It's a thing. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I mean, I know what we're talking about is very vicious. I'm not trying to be dramatic with it. I'm really not. I'm trying to just show, kind of like this name right here, common sense. It's called dissociative disorder. Very good. Very good. Yes, it is. You dissociate from the trauma because otherwise you're going to collapse. You're going to be able to become ineffective. That's why first responders are so good at what they do, because they don't put their emotions in it. They just do the job. They just do the job. I have a friend, Molly, she's been on my panel before, and she was in EMS. And I've talked to her about some of the scenes that what she's seen, and the way she describes it, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, if I saw that, how would I have reacted? But she's seen it so much that she just was able to just turn those emotions off and do the job. And kind of like being a therapist, I turn my emotions off and do the job. I've heard some of the most heinous stuff sitting across the desk from me. I've heard child molesters, I've heard rapists, I've heard murderers, and I still need to be objective. Even though I may not agree with what they did, I still need to be objective and trying to get them to see a different way. So you are able to turn off those emotions and disassociate from them long enough to do your job. But it still doesn't mean that a 20-year-old kid is able to dissociate long enough not to see blood, because it's a natural reaction. It's something that you don't necessarily say, well, you know, I really don't see blood right now. I don't see blood right now. I don't see blood right now. I mean, people are very judgmental when it comes to this case. The ones that actually feel that that he is innocent, they're very judgmental of the ones that look at logic. They're very judgmental on that aspect, and I don't understand why a lot of times. I really don't. Here, I found one of the videos where I'm not just talking on it, because I do want y'all to learn about this, not just hear me talk. I love your comments right now. I really do. Sometimes life is not pretty. I would think you'd expect to see blood so your mind doesn't focus on it. You just see your friend not alive. Very good comment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. You're so right. I mean, you would believe that you'd see blood, but in reality, what's your mind telling you to do? Is it telling you to look away, focus on something else? I mean, because if it was as blood as they say it was, there's been other people that have discussed the Bundy murders, and one of them stated, a surviving person stated that she went in and she thought that some of the blood around her, the person that was gasping for air and was eventually saved, she thought that she had thrown up. And when the EMS officer came in, that's when she calmed down enough to see all the blood on the walls, all the blood on her roommate, all the blood accumulated around her. So it's like you're able to come into reality to an extent. You're not looking for the obvious. You're really not. But there's a lot of individuals that believe that you should have been able to see this. You should have been able to hear this. Tried you to think, okay. Um, my email's on my page. If you just want to email it to me, that'd probably be the best way because I can't click on the links here in the chat. So if you could just email me, one of the mods, Leslie, if you put my email without my first and last name on there, I'd appreciate that, please. Thank you. I'm gonna play some of this. That way you guys can understand a little bit of what I was talking about before.
These calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents into
in the affidavit tells so much about this guy before and after he did this attack. And I think when you look at what he did and what he carried out that day and the way that he did it, we have evidence of him actually doing not quite to that extent, but in Pennsylvania at a brewery where he would go, we know at least of that place where he would go and he would stalk women and ask them questions that were so odd. His behavior was so odd that they actually had warnings for all, when he would scan in with his license, they had warnings that would come up on the computers for the bartenders to watch out for this guy because he was so odd. And when they confronted him, the manager confronted him, he denied it, of course, and then he left, never came back. So I think first and foremost, what we see with this guy is that that night when he did these brutal killings, it was very fast, very fast. He got in there, and I think there was some turmoil going in there with the one girl who just got in a DoorDash and the other girl who recognized him. And he did what any predator that's not on the highest hierarchy of predators, he got out of there as fast as he could. When things didn't go his way, or up to the point where things didn't go his way, he was killing. But then when he was discovered, he got out of there. And so his behavior before shows us kind of his mindset. And then afterwards, I think he was having a oh crap moment where he realized he left his knife sheath behind. And then he was trying to change the license plates on his car. And then he got out of there with his dad. I think he was really starting to realize that he was in a really bad situation. He was going to get.
I mean, as you can see below, his credentials are he was a former Navy SEAL, FBI agent, and an author and host of the Experts podcast, JonathanGilliam.com. So if you go to that podcast and give him some likes and subscribes, that'd be awesome. And also Dr. Drew. So he describing a little bit of what he perceived Brian would have been feeling or thinking during all that stuff. And when he was discovered by Xana, then he realized that he needed to get out of there quickly. He needed to get out of there quickly. And at that point, like he was saying, he realized he needed to go That's probably why he didn't stop to kill Dylan. Because that's another thing that people amaze me a little bit, that they don't revel in the fact that she survived something as violent as her friends did not. You get what I'm saying? She survived something her friends did not. The same thing with Bethany. It's not to be celebrated, but you know what? It is to an extent, because she could have been dead too. The same thing with Bethany. She could have died as well. And the fact that Ashlyn Couch was not there that night, she could have been another victim as well. You know, there could have been 6 dead or 7 dead in that home. If Ashlyn would have been there, if, these 2 would have got murdered, I'm thankful that there were 3 surviving people. And the fact that people want to attack Ashlyn and her mom for that Dateline interview, I mean, I think that's just cowardness. To attack people that survived that could well have been victims themselves, it's just cowardless. Just being a coward to attack the individuals instead of saying, well, I'm glad that they weren't victims as well of a vicious attack that these other 4 had to endure. Because if I remember correctly, Doodlebug, didn't you say you were ex-LE? If that's correct, and I'm sure that you've seen a lot of what I'm talking about firsthand. And like you said, you checked for a pulse and you felt your own. So it is capable or culpable to be able to have this happen to you. And I'm sure that there's some times that you may have walked into a crime scene if you were an on-beat officer. Um, you were walking into a scene where your first reaction was not to see the blood, but you probably saw the victim laying on the floor, or you saw the knife sticking out of the victim, kind of like the Ellen Greenberg case. Can you imagine walking into that crime scene and seeing the knife sticking out of her chest? Would you have noticed the blood all around her and the spatter and all this stuff? No, you wouldn't have. The one thing you would have focused on was a knife sticking out of Ellen's chest. And I'm not trying to be gory to just be gory. I'm just trying to give you an example of how perception plays a huge role in what we really are able to articulate in our minds and what we try to deflect as well. I don't know why I clicked on that one. I meant to click on Doodlebugs. If these girls would have went up there, they would have also been deceased. Yes, exactly, exactly. And that's what is so irritating. Well, whenever people talk about they're not victims and, just diminishing the fact that they're alive. Was an officer, yes, you would see the scene first, but that's for safety concerns and training. Yes, indeed. That's what's disheartening is when we hear people discrediting the fact that these other 2 or these other 3 are alive. That means that they have a heart that's callous in which they wish that these other 3 would have died as well. That is terrible to think about, is it not? Is it not to hear that people want to discredit the fact that these 3 lived and they talk to the extent, and this is all over YouTube. It's all over YouTube. There's a lot of creators that talks down to these surviving roommates where they almost wish that they would have died as well. And that is callous. That is callous.
Get caught probably.
So I got a bunch of questions. First, I'm going to clarify what you meant by the highest hierarchy of killer. That's
Right.
something I'm familiar with. What is that hierarchy?
So that's something I come up with because in the book I talk about predators, and if you look at a lion, and a lion has just killed something, and you disturb that lion, it is going to look at you and either come at you or it's just going to stand its ground. But if, like, I live in Arizona, so if you see coyotes and they're killing something, you come up on them with a flashlight, they're probably going to scamper away. Or if you see a child who goes in and is told not to get cookies out of a cookie jar, and they're in there and they get caught, they're going to deny it. They'll lie right to you, you know. So I think there's a hierarchy of this predatory scale. This is my own scale of how these predators react. And a good example of that, if there was in New York City, it was about 6 months ago, I believe, there was an FDNY lieutenant, I think she was female, coming out of a deli, and a guy knocks her down on the ground, jumps on her and stabs her. There's people walking up, cars driving up. He looks at him just like the lion and just keeps stabbing her until he's done, and then he leaves. So you see a difference here between somebody who doesn't want to get caught and somebody who either wants to get caught or doesn't care. And so in the case with mass shooters as well, they will stand their ground and end up killing themselves because they want to be seen. They want to be seen as dominant. This guy wants.
And that was one thing that I was talking about yesterday in one of my live streams is, did Brian want to get caught? Did he make these mistakes so that he would potentially be apprehended? Or was he so uneducated in these aspects that it didn't cross his mind and he made mistakes? Because, you know, you can plan out a perfect murder, but when it comes to actually doing it, I've heard that it's not as easy as what your mind says is going to happen. Because just like in real life, there's so much unforeseen, so much around that corner that you don't know about. So you can sit there and you can say, well, I planned for this and I planned for that and I planned for the getaway and I planned for this. But what about the unforeseen? Like in this crime, he didn't plan on Xana getting DoorDash. He didn't plan on Ethan probably being there. You know, he didn't plan on that. He didn't, you know, he didn't plan on all that. He didn't plan on, you know, there being other people in the house at that point, I'm sure, because if he did his surveillance, he knew about 4, but he wouldn't have assumed that Ethan was there as well. But that's just my take on it. You know what I mean? Okay. Let me see what your opinion is. I don't feel like he wanted to get caught. I think the adrenaline rush and any unexpected mishap could have shut down the plan. That's a good thought. That's a good thought. And at the end, the adrenaline dump. Yeah. And I spoke about that as well. Do you agree or disagree? Like, I mean, I was just bringing that up because that's what I was talking about yesterday in the live as well. But do you agree that the planning probably was in his mind, but after, like you're saying about the adrenaline dump, do you think everything after the murders became problematic for him due to not planning on that aspect? Do you believe that many times people don't plan for after their crime? They just plan up to the eventual crime, and then after the fact, there's so much that they're just being winged. Let me know about that, chat, and let me know, Doodlebug, what you think about that.
To be seen as dominant, but he wants to be seen in secret over the people that he can be dominant, and then if he gets caught, he's out of there.
And there were, in addition to the odd behavior at the bars, I heard that he, in class, was someone who generally was sort of intrusive and asked a lot of questions, except about the Idaho murders when that came up in the classroom. I saw that. And number 2, that people reported him seeing less uptight after the murders, like calmer. Is that something usual from guys like this?
Yes, because he is. So here's the dilemma that he's in right now. I think he realized that there's a chance he could get caught. He knows that the girl saw him, and so he's worried about that. But at the same time, he is satiated, and once that satiation occurs, I guess it would be the same. You know, I'm trying to think of what I could use as an example. But if you wanted something, you know, I think drug addicts probably go through this a lot, where they crave the drug. They know it's bad for them. And then when they actually get their fix, then there's a couple of moments, a moment where they get the high, a moment where they probably feel somewhat bad about what they did. And then after that, they reflect on that satiation. And
that is a great example, because I can speak on this because, like I said, I work with drug addicts and alcoholics, and I've heard a lot of heroin users tell me that the preparation to get high a lot of times is more intense than the actual high itself. So the preparation of getting all that you need. So think about the killer getting his kill kit ready. Obviously, the pressure is built up to an extreme right now. The fantasy is there. So the buildup is there. So you're getting all that euphoria, the adrenaline, the cortisol going. So you're actually going to prepare for this. And then, like he said, once you get to the actual getting the drug and using the drug, the elation after the fact is so intense that you just, you kind of just let all that pressure go. And I agree with him when he's saying that, after the murders, he was able to be a different person. He was grading different. He was able to go to his doctor's appointment. They said that he was actually acting overly friendly, different. He went to his haircut appointment. He started becoming a different Brian because all that pressure of the semester, I believe, was finally over. It was over. It was released. And instead of getting high, which he wrote in some of his prior writings, I've written, I didn't write, I read, he has stated that he would never use heroin again. So he needed an outlet, so to speak. In my opinion, this was his outlet. And, you know, um, man, yes, he probably felt 10 feet tall and bulletproof. You're right. After the elation of the high, it's kind of like, I was going to say something about the high. Um, the preparation, people have told me, and I'm not trying to be nasty here, but this is just a description. Before you go, let's say you go and get cocaine, or you go and get crack, or you go and get meth. Well, a lot of times people have told me you get the bubble guts, like right before you use, because it's so intense. Your body just wants to have a release, so to speak. It's like the preparation is more than you can handle. And I know that y'all understand this, because have you ever prepared for a vacation or going out to eat at the end of the week, and it's your favorite restaurant, and everything else, the rest of your week goes a little hectic because you're thinking about that moment. And once you reach that moment, the anticipation is so great in your mind because you relive this over and over and over. That's the fantasy perception. So you relive this in your brain. I can't wait for this to happen. I can't wait for this to happen. And then all of a sudden, it happens. And you got one or two scenarios that happen. Either it's the best and it meets the expectations of what you thought it was going to be, or if you get the opposite, it's the worst experience that you thought it was going to be, then it is an extreme letdown. And I've also heard that this is whenever people go from that killing, they sometimes, kind of like Richard Ramirez, he went from killing to actually killing again because that killing did not suffice the buildup. So he had to go kill again very quickly in order to get that emotional attachment fulfilled. Yes, you're extremely right. You're extremely right, Cash. Yes, you're extremely right.
That's what leads them to doing it again, is that they on how good that was. And I think in a lot of ways, these psychopathic, narcissistic, Machiavellian types of people, he's probably totally satiated and fixated on that at the same time.
Yes.
Where you and I would be losing it because we got caught. This guy, that's kind of in the background of his worry. He's maneuvering because he knows that doing something wrong will get him in trouble, but it's not ethically based. It's whether or not he can continue to do the things that he wants.
You mentioned drugs here, and we know that he had a history with heroin, which I find weird. I've never seen drug addicts, so I've never known a drug addict to engage in this kind of behavior. Do you think? I'm just wondering what the relationship is between obviously, meth addicts will do crazy things and kill people, but that's in sort of an impulsive manic state. But I don't see the cold-blooded Machiavellianism associated with drug addiction per se, or am I just not getting exposed to that?
No, I don't really see that either. And I don't think that this was related to his drug addiction. I think his drug addiction was related to what happened to him when he was young. It appears that, I mean, he's always got parents because his dad drove all the way to flew to Washington State, got in a vehicle that he knows, unless he lives in a cave, that law enforcement is looking for 15 minutes from where these murders occurred, and still got in the car and drove with him back to Washington State. I mean, doting parents, if you take a person who's very, very bright and you have parents that dote on them, and then they have this other traumatic experience like that, and he was bullied and these types of things happened, I think the heroin addiction probably came from him dealing with these types of things, but the heroin addiction was just a temporary fix. And I think somewhere along the way, he had this deviation where killing or dominating and some type of thing was coming out. As he lost weight, that got more and more profound in his life.
Well, let me talk about that little aspect a little bit too. You know, since he's talking about the weight loss, one thing that I was talking to somebody that's very close to me the other day is I was saying, you know, there's a lot of people that I've counseled that have had struggles with weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight, losing weight. So think about that a little bit. And many of them had told me, even though they lost the weight, if they lost it due to their drug addiction, then even though they were skinnier in their eyes or they were thinner, in their mindset, they never overcame the mental aspect of being heavy. So in their mind, even though they were physically skinnier and thinner, they still had the heavy person's mentality. So even though people were telling them, look, you look amazing, you look this, you look that, in their mind, they still saw the heavy person in the mirror. They still felt like they needed to do more and more and more because they weren't thin enough in their mindset, because they never replaced the mindset, because they were never able to drop the weight, kind of like somebody who works out or eats different. The transition is natural. So therefore, once you lose the weight, once you get fit, once you get toned, you're okay with it. There's no more, well, I'm going to gain all this weight back next week. Someone who does it artificially, they're constantly living in that mindset of a heavy person because they never did it naturally. They did it artificially. So in their mindset, they're thinking, well, I'm going to gain this weight back in a couple of days. I need to do this to keep it off. So with Brian, I believe that he would have felt, because he did it artificially. He did it at such a fast pace. I believe that he never got over the mindset of being heavy. I believe that he always felt he was a little out of sorts, even though, and the reason I say that is because he developed this aggressiveness. He developed a different persona to exemplify to other people who may have potentially bullied the new Brian. You get what I'm saying? Like, if he still saw himself heavy, he developed the aggressiveness to the point to protect himself, even though he knew he was thinner, he had lost the weight. I'm going to develop this different mentality, even though I should be okay with people saying that I look good. I need to be aggressive just in case somebody has the capability of bullying me again. Hence, being bullied by females, being bullied by other people. The aggressive person was the chameleon that I was talking about. So, in that aspect, that chameleon was the protector of the actor. The actor was the TA. The actor was the person that was created in that retrospect to fit in with society. So he created those two people in order to be the one person he desired to be, in my opinion. Let me know if this makes sense at all or if I'm just psychobabbling right now.
And that's why I don't think that drugs would really solve his issue. He may get a high out of it, but his desire is domination and potentially to kill. And I think that goes what you see with a lot of these serial killers. They've had substance abuse problems, but that is, I think we've found one thing that does not that heroin can't fix or can't give you enough of a high, which is taking a human life. And if that's your desire, you're going to eventually do that.
I don't, in my world, I don't deal with criminals. So this is always in the criminality is correct me if I'm wrong, but I experience at least as a separate phenomenon from mental health issues. They cross over, they coexist together, but criminality per se has its own sort of logic to it, let's say, or a good experience associated with it. And do we think, other than character problems, personality disorders, dark triad, do we think there's anything else going on with this guy? You said trauma, like something happened in childhood. It makes me wonder if some of this dominating kinds of behavior is really directed towards women, and the men just get taken out incidentally.
That could be, but I will say this one thing about, I always tell people when they have a hard time perceiving the way that this individual thinks and kind of getting in that mindset. So we'll take your specialty, you a lot with people with drugs, where you talk to other people and they say, how could somebody do a drug to the point that it ruins their lives or makes their teeth fall out or causes huge sores on their body, but yet they're still using a needle to shoot up between their toes? I mean, a lot of people would be like, how could you do that? But I think when when you put yourself in their position, drug addicts a lot of the times are trying to escape something, or they're just having a good time partying, and they get stuck in that lethal.
Yes, because it is the method of overcoming control. It's like, step one says, my life has become unmanageable. Well, your life has become unmanageable because of your thought process and your use of the substance. The substance is not necessarily all the time the problem. Your life is unmanageable due to your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and the inability to decipher between trusting people and alienating them. So your use of chemicals is to, in retrospect of some people, to be able to deal with life on life's terms by using substances. Substances is nothing but a symptom of something greater being wrong. So many people, they believe that drug addicts use drugs because they enjoy the high. Well, that happens initially. You enjoy the escape. You enjoy the high. You enjoy all this, but after the honeymoon stage, eventually that high, it goes away and it becomes a need. It becomes a need to be able to cope with life. In order to be okay with me, I got to be high. I got to be drunk. I got to be under the influence of some chemical, even if it's coffee, even if it's caffeine, even if it's that energy drink I just drank. In order to deal with me, I got to be under the influence of a chemical in order to deal with my day. Not to deal with other people, but to deal with myself. I got to be under the influence. So think about that aspect with Brian. If he wasn't, if he was not deviating from his coping skills, then he was okay. He was going through life succeeding. The nature of his intensity with his studies was becoming the high that was getting him through life. So once he continued to elevate his studies and excelling, that was the high. He would, he was getting praise for it. He had lost all that weight, but in his mind, he was still dealing with the chameleon, which was the drug addict, which was the overweight person, which was the person who felt he was not an achiever. You know, dealing with all this aspect, the actor had more pressure on him. So the balance was not there. When you have the chameleon and you have the actor, well, the chameleon protects the actor, but yet the actor is developing more pressure. This chameleon has to do something to equalize it. So think about that aspect a little bit. He wasn't doing drugs. He wasn't doing drugs that we know of. He may have been drinking a little bit. That might have been the equalizer for a little while. That might have been what was keeping him balanced. Because in life, we're looking for that balance. So, what was his balance? What was on this side that was equating the actor? The chameleon is protecting the actor. So, what was the balancing point? What was keeping the actor, quote unquote, normal? Do y'all understand what I'm saying? I hope you do, because I know it's confusing and I know it's hard to assimilate in the short amount of time that I'm presenting it. Hopefully, if you do understand this or you do kind of understand it and you want to learn more, you continue to watch this video to educate yourself, or you educate yourself with your own research, because it is a dimension in which, if it becomes unbalanced, it can become very deadly to a lot of people.
Free fall of behavior and chemical addiction. I think with this guy, and we see this with Jeffrey Dahmer, we see this with Ted Bundy, with a lot of these people, is that it may not be that easy to pinpoint where that switch was. Whereas with a drug addict, we can go back and say, well, they had a terrible relationship with their father, were raped when they were a child, and they got introduced at one point where they got introduced to a drug, and boom, we can trace the addiction back to that. The problem is the rape. But with these people, a lot of the times, I think they just have a predatory nature, and when you get the mix of all these things just right, it's just a darker desire. It's not so much of an addiction as it is their physical desire. I like women. The guy likes to kill women. I mean, so that is his. That becomes his. Some people it's sexual. Some people it is just pure domination, and it kind of replaces that sexual urge. I know the Green River Killer. I think that's who it is. Well, this has happened with several people, but where they have killed women and went back and had sexual relations with their dead and decomposing bodies because they could relive. It wasn't as much as the sex as it was the domination. And what we'll see with this guy is when they get into the interviewing and interrogating, if he decides to confess so that he can get a plea or something like that, you're going to start to see a guy that plays games with law enforcement, and then he starts to relive what he did through this whole fame game. And I foresee that happening quite potentially.
Because think of this aspect. If he was as confident as people give him credit for, thank you so much for that, Cash. Thank you. If he was as confident as people give him credit for, Would he have went into this house in the middle of the night, or would he have done what I almost called him Al Bundy, Ted Bundy did, and went into a huge sorority and just not, checked on doors and just did whoever he found to have their door unlocked. You get what I'm saying? Because he was not as confident, it doesn't appear to me, as some of these other killers. Kind of like, let's talk about Ted Bundy a little bit. For him to go into that huge sorority, Elliot Rodger was going to go into a sorority house and kill people with a gun. The doors were locked at the front, thank God, or there would have been a huge massacre in that sorority. You know what I mean? He was not as confident because he started off with a targeted house. They had the easier aspect. Like he went in while they were sleeping. He didn't go in while the house was actively, active. He didn't go in during 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. He didn't go in when it was just Dylan or Bethany there. He didn't go in when it was just Xana or Ethan there, or Maddie or Kaylee. No, he went in when everybody was there, but it was an easier target for him. It was an easier target. You get what I'm saying? He didn't go in to a bigger avenue where it was going to be a lot harder for him to pull off his murderous rage. No, he went into something that was easy because that would have been asleep. The ambush aspect. Now, if he was really confident about his abilities, or if he was really confident about becoming a serial killer, then he would have picked a harder area to carry out his murderous rage. Good day, Jack. How you doing? Elliot also looked at the world like it was making fun of him, like people were happy to hurt him. Exactly. You know, um, and that's what I believe. Yeah, I think it was his first. Yeah. I think Ethan and the last that came over were a shock to him. Plant went away. Yeah, you're right. So I believe that Brian was not as confident as people give him credit for. He was not as confident as people give him credit. Not in life, not in the killings, none of that. It all shows lack of confidence, even though it was a very planned out attack and it was very vicious and very violent. The viciousness and violence was due to the inexperience, I believe, and the lack of confidence because a lot of these others, even though they were violent attacks, they were very methodical. They weren't as sloppy in some of the areas as this crime was.
That's frightening.
Yeah, it's wild. And you also suggest that he has done this before.
I would think, I don't know of any. I mean, I can think back on a few people, maybe the Mansons. There might have been one or two people in there, that whole Manson group, that had never really killed before, and then that one night they killed, several people. So there instances do happen, but typically when somebody does this big of an attack, they have killed before, and this is an escalation. So they couldn't get any more fulfillment from just killing one. That's why they start off with bullying or doing some type of Machiavellian type of what's the word I'm trying to get here, where they're very sadistic in the way that they manipulate people. So at first it's manipulation, and then it turns into power, where they'll kill an animal or hurt an animal, and then they'll go over to where they'll manipulate people more and hurt them mentally. And so there's escalation of what their desire tells them that they need. I mean, we see the same thing with addiction to porn, where people go from just turning on a
It escalates.
computer and looking at certain things, and it escalates.
No, you're right, and it makes me wish and wonder at the same time that we have a better neurobiological explanation for this, because it has a flavor of behavioral addictions, and oftentimes what throws sort of the rocket fuel on the behavioral addictions is previous chemical addiction. So it becomes more and more difficult to get the satisfaction of the behavioral addiction. So they come in at a pretty high level, and then it escalates from there.
So he made another great point with the porn addiction, the same kind of escalation. It's kind of like you get the pleasure very early on with the limbic system, the pleasure center, and you get that pleasure, and it builds and builds and builds because let's say I don't know if any of you have ever been addicted to chemicals at all. I don't know if you've ever been addicted to alcohol or pornography or any kind of overreactive situation where it's become unmanageable in your mind. So think about this. The first time that you do something, there is such an elation. And I'm not trying to be dirty here. I'm trying to just be scientific because this is how I explain it to my groups, okay? So think about this. They say an orgasm, the intensity of an orgasm is equal to snorting a line of cocaine in the brain. The orgasm gives you that sense of lighting up in the brain that snorting a line does. So think about the first time that ever experienced to anybody. And you're chasing that same high from that moment on. And it has to be more intense and more intense, more intense. That's why pornography is so dangerous to individuals at a young age. That's why pornography is so dangerous for young people to be watching, because the escalation intensifies. The drug addiction intensifies. The first time you ever did cocaine, the first time you ever got drunk, the first time you ever did meth or smoked weed or whatever, you're chasing the dragon, so to speak. So it has to be more intense and more intense and more intense every time to fulfill that desire. So think about Brian being a drug addict. He's able to overcome that. He's able to become quote unquote normal. But he experiences other areas. We've known by the Dateline episode that he was into pornography, just like many men are. That's nothing tremendous. That's not a boom. That's not any of that, because I would expect him to be looking at porn if he was a single man. So think about his escalation into pornography. And that's why that's so important. The fact that he was viewing porn is not a boom. I would expect that to be there. But think of the escalation in the area that they may have found on his hard drive, of the escalation of some of the porn that he may have been viewing. Was there bondage? Was there violence in the pornography? Was there areas of abduction? Was there areas of harming the individual as they slept, and then having your way with them? If any of this is ever expressed in the trial, or is there a pattern of this, then you will see why that is so important. People minimize all this stuff as if, oh, everybody looks at porn. Well, we're not stupid. Your point isn't that extraordinary to prove innocence, okay? It's really not. Everybody does look at pornography at one point in their lives. You are correct at that point. But it's not about the actual act of looking at pornography, but the point of the escalative types of pornography and the realm of what type of porn was being watched. Was it, you know, sadistic pornography? Was it actually cutting the person? Was it actually having the method of control of tying them up and messing with them with the knife, and then you know, the actual act of sexual gratification based on the phallic symbol of the knife? So 12, do you feel like the knife was the satisfactory penetration? You're fine. You're fine. It has to be stated, Doodlebug. It really does. We're adults in this chat, and if people get offended by that, then they don't need to watch, because this is the actual act of criminal acts. I mean, you're right. The knife was the phallic symbol. You know, the stabbing could have been the penetration. And I remember early on, there was a rumor by the Inside Looking, or maybe it was Papa Roger. One of them was stating that, could the killer have had um, erectile dysfunction, or could they have a sexual dysfunction that they could not perform? And if that is true, then that would more than likely be the reason why there wasn't a sexual aspect to this crime, because there would have been the phallic symbol of the knife penetrating, and that would have been given the person the sexual gratification that they could not perform otherwise. Because maybe the killer had, and I'm not trying to be nasty either, but you know, this is all conducive to what real true crime is about. It's not about, you know, those other shows that just show the minimal, you know, portions of it, whatever. So you're not offending anybody. This is an adult chat. We know exactly what goes on here. You're fine. I'm glad that you did that statement. But think about this. If Brian was incapable of performing, either performing too quickly or not being able to get the erection that was desired in a sexual attack, then the knife would have overcompensated by the penetration of the stabbings. Maybe the rage was the fact that he maybe anticipated him getting erect during seeing the women, or seeing Maddie in her room and going in there and seeing Kaylee, and that diminishing his ability to stay erect. Or maybe he had an accident in the process, and that thus became the overkill. Does that make sense? Yeah, you do grow up fast in this chat, Rondi. Thank you for being here. You're fine. You're fine, Doodlebug. You're fine. Anybody that talks openly and freely in the chat, you're fine. I don't censor anybody when it comes to the aspect of criminal analogies and criminal thought, because that's what my chat is about. That's what my lives are about. And then seeing Ethan took away, so the leg came about. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, I know that we've seen many true crime shows where there has been sadistic aspects of the crime. And I'm not glorifying it by no means. I don't want anybody to watch this to think that I'm glorifying this, but this is part of the methodology. This is part of the mens rea that I talk about, the guilty mindset. This is part of the negligence that goes along with commission of a crime. So all of this goes hand in hand. And I hope that by hearing this, you're able to really understand the criminal aspect a little more than what is being spoken about as far as theories and, you know, hypothesis and all this other stuff that's being discussed in other chats. This is not what we do here. We deep dive into the criminal part of it to understand it, to give examples, to give theories based on criminal aspects of other crimes, not just on trying to make innocence or guilt out of one person. We're trying to mainly help people understand how this could be such a heinous crime and the victims that were affected in this crime, if that makes sense to you at all. Let's continue on.
Heroin sort of blunts some of, permanently blunts some of the satisfaction. It makes me wonder if it had some role in what's going on here. It's very odd. It's very bizarre. It is so hard to get my head around. For you, it's like me with addiction. Like I get it. And for what you're going to say, I'll let you ask, Jonathan.
Well, I think first of all, when it comes to criminals, as strange as it may sound, just like somebody wants to get up in the mornings and have a cigarette. And for somebody like me, I'm a health guy. I can even imagine that desire at all, but people do that.
Yeah.
That's the first thing they think about.
Yeah.
Some people think about porn more than they think about going out with somebody. They're addicted to porn. And I think with somebody like this, what's interesting is that as dangerous it just happens so rarely that the entire psychological community doesn't really look at this. And I got to tell you, Dr. Drew, working around criminals for many, many years and watching people in all these different career fields and functioning as a trained killer, as a Navy SEAL, one thing that I've seen is that people will get themselves into a position, they'll deviate and they'll go down the road where they will literally wake up in the mornings and think, how am I going to, go about killing this person or shaking this person down?
That's a good question, Rondi. She said she always wondered if Brian had zip ties or rope in his car. I don't remember them gathering any zip ties in the inventory, but I could have overlooked that. I mean, I don't think there was any, but I know they said none of them were tied up, so we don't want to spread that rumor. But I want you to understand that just because they weren't tied up does not mean that he couldn't have had tape over their mouths as he went in, or he could have been choking them. Like I said earlier, it's a very personable crime. So therefore, one hand is holding them to him while the other hand is stabbing or punching. So very heinous and very vicious.
For money, it be where they wake up. It's like Lex Luthor, Superman. Superman wakes up to see what he can do good. Lex Luthor wakes up to see what he can do bad. And that actually exists in the world. And when you add to that a psychoaviation, they go down some very dark paths where they have no conscience at all, no empathy, no concern about life at all.
Do they have concerns about their own well-being, or do they just not even care about that?
They do, but in a different way. Whereas you have an ethical concern about how you are to other people. You're concerned.
So since he's talking about all this aspect right now, this popped into my head. I want to ask you, chat. People act like those pictures of friends of the victims on his phone that were found was no big deal. What would be the purpose of you having those pictures on your phone if you weren't fantasizing, gratifying, or even planning? Could those been his next victims? Could those been other areas that he was surveying? Could those been other areas that he was looking out to be potential other acts of violence or murders? People act like those pictures on his phone are no big deal. So he had pictures of other people on his phone. So he was viewing porn. So he was doing all this stuff. No big deal. No big deal. He was 28 years old. I don't look at it that way. I'll look at it on a mens rea aspect of a guilty mind, of a state of mind, of a potential individual that could have been staking out other people. It looked like he was very fixated on this group of friends, especially the females. Especially the females. He had these pictures of these females that were close to the victims. Could have been a networking of his next targets. Could he have been infatuated, fixated on these individuals? Could he have even been, maybe those 23 times around the residence, some of those times could have been at 1122, but was there other pings at other houses or sororities? We don't know about that because we've never been told. But that's not without a realm of reality. You know what I mean? I've always said that. I've always talked about that in some of my last videos that I have on my page. I've always believed that 1122 was just the opportunity presented itself that night. I believe that there was other residences, whether houses, sororities, that he could have been surveying, that could have been backup plans that just didn't, that fell through. I feel that 1122 was the residence of that night, that everything coagulated together that made it the perfect attack. What do y'all think about that? What do y'all think about that? Texas says, I'm not sure he had a plan B. I think he may have known about that by now, possibly. Yeah. I mean, I've always thought there was other residences, that 1122 was not just his primary target. I feel that maybe everything became the perfect storm where that became the targeted place, but there was other aspects that he could have been working on. He could have been surveying. Because what was the purpose of having these other photos of people in your phone? You just don't have random people's photos in your phone unless you're having them for a purpose in your phone. Look in your phone right now. Do you have random people of the opposite sex that you have in your phone for no reason other than they're in your phone? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So there's a guilty mindset or a state of mind of this aspect. Yeah, hopefully it'll come out in court. And that's why I'm talking about this, because I'm trying not to debunk other people, but I'm trying to get people to, if they want to think on a different realm of why all this stuff is so important. That it is really important to this case, unlike what other people believe it is. Hopefully it'll come out in court, but I'm sure it looks like he chose Matty Mogan. I'm sure he did. Always thought, why not around where he lived in his neighborhood? And we don't know if he didn't have photos of people that lived in his apartment complex or in his neighborhood or even in Pullman. We don't know. But I believe that 1122 was the perfect storm that night. And it just happened to be all together in one of his plans that that was going to be the house and that was going to be that night for whatever reason.
About, you understand that you could get hurt, or that if this occurs, you're going to go to jail and your life will be over. I think you look at Bernie Madoff, he's a perfect example. Bernie Madoff really didn't have any concerns about anything except not getting caught, because it wouldn't allow him to do that. And then when he did get caught, he went to jail and he became a superstar in jail, up until he died. He was the guy who did everybody's taxes and gave everybody financial advice. And they said he.
Because think about this. There was that DUI hit and run. There was all those cops by his apartment complex. If he cared about being caught, that would have stopped him. He would have said, no, there's too many cops. There's too many eyes. I'm going to be seen. There were the cops on the band field. If he rode by the band field and he saw any aspect of law enforcement or anything like that, he would have said, no, this isn't the night. I need to call it off. I need to do it some other time. He would have known that all these things were circling him. But he went against his better judgment, I'm sure, and said, you know what, F it. I'm going to do it. Tonight's the night. It's going to happen. I don't care. I don't care. The DoorDash driver. There's no way he could have not seen the DoorDash driver. That would have been enough to call it off. There's too many eyes around me. I need to call it off. You know? Why didn't he call it off? Because he was hell bent on doing this crime.
From an abusive woman who's just been beat up big time, and they get there, they get into a tussle with the husband or boyfriend, and when they cuff him, the woman just loses it, and she actually starts calling them all kinds of names and telling them that they're
Right.
worthless and they're, you know, all these different things. And
Yeah.
and I think I forgot where I was going with that. What was the question that you asked
Well,
me
the
there?
dad.
Okay.
But parents are a little different. They already are disposed to kind of protect the kids. You know, they sort of easily manipulated.
Right. But I think what happens is kind of some of what you get with the abused wife is that these parents see this.
And I'm going to stop it right here. I'm going to continue this on probably on a second part, but I want to talk about some other aspects of questions that I've had from my chat and other chat that I've spoken on this. Somebody asked me, do I think that the father knew about what Brian had done? Do I believe that the father was knowledgeable or that Brian had told him about what he did? If we're looking at Brian through the eyes of an honest person, a law abiding person, a person who, if we're looking at the actor, then he would have probably been honest. But I believe that once Brian committed these crimes, he let his chameleon show. He became that alter ego, which he was confident. He was arrogant almost to an extent. He might have been calmer, but he was still having that narcissistic personality where he was above everybody because he did something that he didn't get caught at. He was able to commit these crimes and get away with it in his mind. So he could have lied to his dad. Oh, Dad, yeah, they came and talked to me about the Elantra. I told them that I was at home, or I told them that I was out for a hike or a run. He could have gave his dad that lie and convinced his dad that, they weren't onto him. There was no, they had looked into him. He told them, exactly what they needed to know, and he was cleared. People are looking at him as a choir boy, as an individual who always told the truth, who always was the law-abiding citizen. No, we know based on body cams and on document that he was not a good driver, but neither was Ted Bundy. He was not a good driver because where was his mindset? What was his mind on that caused him to tailgate twice on the way home? Is that coincidental? It could be. But you get pulled over for it once, you would think that all of a sudden that would be something that you would be in your mind. Well, I need to watch how I'm driving, bro. But not Brian. He gets pulled over twice for it. He gets pulled over for a seatbelt ticket, which obviously he was speeding. His mindset was not about what he was supposed to be doing driving. The mens rea, the guilty state of mind. Did somebody almost catch him at 11:22? Is that why he was speeding away? Did somebody catch him and he thought that he was caught? That somebody had seen him, taken a picture of him, maybe taken a picture of his car? Maybe people had seen that car with him in it more than one time. Maybe there were some photos of the creepy guy seen at the scene. Maybe cops do have that evidence because there's a lot of photos and a lot of videos and a lot of tips that were given. Yeah, he didn't seem to care at all. He didn't seem to care at all. But he was speeding away from that area. Why was he speeding away? He was pulled over for speeding and he didn't have his seatbelt on. Come on, Bri. What caused you not to put that seatbelt on, bro? What were you speeding away from? Just like at 4:20 in the morning, we see you on camera, supposedly speeding away from the crime scene. A white Elantra that matches yours. A white Elantra that was seen circling the residence more than once. What's up, Bri? What happened? Your mind wasn't on your driving at WSU either. You rolled into the crosswalk. And then it always looks like when you're caught, your eyes get really big, as if you hope that whoever is holding you accountable, you go back to the actor to present a face of innocence, to present a face that you don't want the world to see the other person that many people have described as creepy, as unapproachable, all these things. But whenever you're caught on body cam, there's the actor, not the psychopath, the calm, collective, kind person, the quiet person, not the person who's been seen at the student union staring at people, not the person that was described at the pool party to be just staring at two older women when the husband came over to ask you to stop. The women left. And what did you do? Did you stop? No. You moved right over to where they moved at and continued to stare. The chameleon. Nobody can tell me what to do. Nobody can redirect me. So I hope this paints a little mens rea for you. A little bit of potential negligence on his part to show you that he's not as innocent as people paint him to be. That those little bit of aspect that people do talk about and harp and get loud and cuss and go on and on and on about are more important than what they want you to see. Because if it wasn't that important, just like his attorney, they wouldn't be trying to diffuse it. They wouldn't be trying to throw it off, throw your attention off of it. If it wasn't that important, why did they go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about these situations? Why? To deflect, to make you believe that they're not as important as what people who actually know of their importance do speak about. They are important. And if you actually put these pieces together, as I've done so today, you will actually see why the mindset of Brian Koberger could potentially be the mindset of a killer that committed these quadruple homicides, and how it is more culpable than inculpable of him doing so. I hope you've enjoyed this. Do y'all have any questions before I leave? If you do, put stars in the chat and I'll try to answer them to my ability. It's like at the pool party when the two women didn't want to talk to him, then her husband said something, he still didn't care. It's like you were reading my mind, Rondi. I wonder if the person he almost hit leaving has his plate number. Wouldn't that be some shit? Excuse my language, but wouldn't that be some shit? Is the chameleon and the actor part of survival? Exactly it is. It's part of your trauma of living life when you have no clue how to live it on your terms. You've lived it by using drugs. You've lived it by lying. You've lived it by manipulating. You've lived it by cheating. You've lived it by getting angry. You've lived it by being the aggressor rather than being the bullied. It's all about trauma bonding. It's all about overcoming and surviving in the world in which you feel that you have no power in. And to gain that power, you must reinvent yourself countless times. So, how did he do it? He became educated. He still wasn't able to get women like he wanted because he had some interpersonal problems that he didn't want the world to see. He wanted to present himself to the world as being normal, just like everyone else. It's going to also be really interesting to find out whose IDs he had in his glove compartment, and the explanation for those. Very true. But it doesn't mean something violent. Not all the time, but in his case it does. In his case it does. Not all the time. Some people are able to control that violence. But in his case, it looks like he wasn't, because the pressure became more than he could handle. And that's an interesting thought. That's an interesting thought, Glitter, because what if he'd been in that house one of those 23 times when no one was home and took the IDs? If anybody's ID doesn't necessarily have to be the victim's, could have been anybody's ID that he found in the residence. You get what I'm saying? Because we know that people take trophies. If he really did go into that coworker of his, the Asian, and rearrange their stuff, then he's capable of being the chameleon to fit in, go into a residence, and take anything he wanted. Maybe just watch. You don't know if he ever went in on one of those 23 times and just walked up those stairs and watched Maddie sleeping and then left just to see how close he could get to his victim without being caught. And that could have been some of the de-escalation of the pressure. But like I'm saying, it's about the balance. The pressure becomes so intense, you got to do something to make it balanced in order to coexist in this world. So the pressure was up. If he did sneak into the home, it allowed him to be balanced because he got close enough to his victim or a victim. Best I can remember, the IDs weren't victims, but were tied to the house, I think is what they said. Yeah. Didn't have to be the victim's IDs. People are looking at this so small. So small. And that's where the burglary charge could have also been established. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Who's the number one with the crown today? Who has the number one slot? Who has the crown? Did they already leave? Was it Aquarius? Because Aquarius was the first one in here today. I don't know if she has the crown. Let me go look on YouTube and I'll be able to tell you. I'll be able to tell you how people rate as far as looking, being in the chat. That's what's cool about YouTube now, is you can tell who your people are that go into the chat first. Let me turn that off. Let me see what it says about the community. Leslie and Billy is in the top slot, 225. Aquarius is second with 200 points. YouTube Badass Actors is third today with 150. And then we have Glitter, Doodlebug, Cash, Rondi, Common Sense, Warning label 75. All y'all have 75. Texas has 75. Walt Harris has 50. GM has 25 points for today, and Jack has 25 points. So the community leaderboard goes to Leslie and Billy today with 225 points. Aquarius is second, and YouTube badass actors. We added the ass on that YouTube bad actors, so it sounds like your channel's badass. Glitter was fourth with 150, and Doodle is fifth. Those are the top five for today, 100 points. Cash is number 6. So if you want to be on that leaderboard, you got to sign in here and get those points going. Get those points going. Leslie and Billy has number 1 slot today. I think the way Ellie put this case out has caused so much havoc. You're right, Doodle. Leslie and Billy, number 1. How I do that is late. All I get out. Texas, I was late too. Tighten up, Ranger. I think it goes with how you log in, or whether you push the like button or whatever. I don't know how it does it. I think it's cool though that the community actually is rated like this. Let me show you guys. That way you don't think I'm lying or pushing favoritism here. I'm gonna show you. Y'all see that? There it is. Leslie and Billy, Aquarius, YouTube badass actors, Glitter, and Doodlebug. Cash, Rondi, Common Sense, Warning Label, Texas, Walt, GM, and Jack. Community leaderboard. I don't know how they do that, but that's pretty cool, I think. Look at all those windows. How did that happen? Stop sharing. That's kind of creepy. So what do y'all think about that? That's pretty cool, huh? You win a night under the crazy moon. Yes, indeed. The full moon is around the corner. So you guys who have chemical imbalances that you know of, you will understand that if this moon is as heavy as the ones in the past, you will be getting sleepy, and you will be sleeping a lot more because of the chemical imbalance. Like they say, our body's 80% water. So think about that. The tide goes in, and then the tide goes out. So if the tide's going in, if you got chemical imbalances, that means it's over flooding your chemical imbalance and making your serotonin level and all that a lot more overbalanced. So you're going to be more sleepy. So as the 3 days before the full moon and then 3 days after, the tide goes out and you start to normalize due to your chemical imbalance. You were a king for a day. So Glitter says it goes off your interaction and chat, your messages, your super chats, and your super stickers. And I think because Leslie and Billy gave a super chat last night for $5, I think that put her on the top. If you go back to the community leaderboard and you click on the little circle with the question, it will tell you how to get the XP points. Okay, let me go do that, Glitter. You're so knowledgeable on this. I'm glad that you're in the chat to explain it to us because I have no clue. The kids are waiting to go to the pool, so we're going to go to the pool for a couple of hours after I get off here. They're kind of like, come on, dude, get it over with already. I'm sure they'll hop in here in a minute and be like, get over with already. We're ready to go to the pool. Let's see where the circle is. Okay, it says, what's the leaderboard? A place for fans to stand out in the community. The top 3 get special badges in the live chat. It resets after every stream, so you can always try again. How do I get on the leaderboard? You'll need to collect experience points or XP. Here's how you get them. Send live chat messages, send super chats and super stickers. Okay, so the more you engage in the chat, the more you accumulate these. So the more you chat in the live chat, you get XP points. And some of you are very vocal in here. You win a Coke. There you go. 12, that's from the Wizard of Oz, the Cowardly Lion. It resets every live chat, and it actually goes in real time, so the XP points don't carry over. Okay. Glitter, I've seen you in Anjanette Levy's chat, I think it was. She has a good chat, a good live. I emailed her and we corresponded. Hopefully her schedule gets busy. I doubt it since the trial is coming up. Um, I'd like for her to be on my chat or me be on her chat. Hopefully that happens. So if you ever catch her, mention my name over there, Glitter. Hopefully we can get her over here or me over there. Experience points are automatically calculated. Doodlebug, I'll take that Coke. Thank you. I love it. I love that you guys enjoy being over here. I love the fact that you guys do enjoy being over here. I love that. I like her chat room, and a lot of people from the docket go in there. Since I mod for the docket, I go in there. So she's super nice. Oh, well, tell her I said hi. That's awesome that you're a mod over there too. I'll probably be taking applications for a new mod here in the next coming month or so. So if you'd like to be a mod on my channel, put in some time over here and let me know. And maybe you can get that wrench over here. We'd like you being over here as well. We noticed that you haven't been over here as much. I was wondering if, maybe you didn't enjoy the community anymore. We enjoy you. Who is it? Who's what? The docket? There and Gavin Fish and AFC, I will help you out anytime. All right, we appreciate that. Because we want to, as spokesperson for my channel, I'm trying to get my channel up to a professional level of, respect. I don't want it to be thrown in with any of these other lower level true crime creators because they're happy to be where they're at. I want it to be more upper level professional type channel, and I've always said that. That's why, and I say that based on my experience because many people don't believe that just because you have a profession or a licensure or education that it makes you much more relatable to what you're talking about. I believe that I've paid my dues in that retrospect, so I'm able to talk on my opinions based on knowledge and wisdom and education. But people make fun of that. They make fun of just because you've gone to college and you get a degree and that you have a professional job and that you're actually a professional. That doesn't give you the same credence as when they're able to Google something or chat GBT it or actually YouTube it. I'm not ever downing anybody for their knowledge and expertise based on being able to be self-taught, but you know what? It does give you a little higher up to be able to actually work in these environments because you get to see a part of it that you wouldn't otherwise understand just based on what you read. Is that not right, Doodlebug? Yes, having a safe place to speak your opinion really matters. And I'm glad that you feel that this is a safe place. You have respect because you give respect and you allow people to have their own opinions without being ostracized. Yeah, I am an honest person. So whenever you hear me saying or doing something on somebody else's behalf and it sounds outlandish, like cussing somebody out and throwing them out of a chat, that is ridiculous. All you have to do is go back and look at that chat and look at that live, and you can see for yourself that I never cussed this person out and I never threw them out. But their perception is that I cussed them out and I threw them out. And they keep harping on that. And I don't know why. I guess because they feel that they weren't as powerful as they thought they were. Let them make fun and we keep doing what we do over here. And you're right, experience is the perfect thing to have. And knowledge is power. Yeah. I don't like feeling stress in a chat. That's why I don't go to other chats. Hey, PKC. You never answered my question last night. How is that cat of yours? Has it been a little deviant? Has it been a little deviant? I want to see a picture of that cat. I'd like to show the chat the cat that you talk about because I'm kind of curious as to what that cat looks like. You know what I mean? I lost it though whenever you said the cat clawed your hand and went across your keyboard. I lost it. I was laughing not at your pain, but I was the visual of seeing that cat claw your hand and then run across your keyboard. I thought to myself, man, that cat better have been pretty quick. I don't believe in animal cruelty, but sometimes cats can get vicious. They get vicious and they hurt, especially if they draw blood. So many chats I just have to leave. It's like high school. Yeah. PKC, my road buddy. Yep. I've seen y'all together in a lot of chats. I've seen y'all in Anjanette's. I've seen y'all in interview room. Some good chats. So that makes me feel good that y'all enjoy coming over here and actually being mods for me. That makes me feel good. Like I said, I'm going to be taking applications for a mod in the next month or so. And if you'd like to be a mod on this channel, give me a little bit of your resume and how you would like to continue helping yourself grow by being a part of this channel like that. Ronnie said, Doodlebug, sure, I get it. Lots of actors in YouTube. 12, did you see Viviana calling out Anjanette? I did. I did. I think she was calling out part of the person that she had relaying that information, not so much Anjanette, even though she had that person on her panel or whatever. I think that's what that was about. I mean, at least Viviana's fair. At least she's not wishy-washy. You know what I mean? PKC, tell me about your cat. My cats like to lay down on the keyboard or try to grab my phone out of my hand. They get jealous and then they're little Beto type crazy stuff. Bean toes. Okay. I've heard of that. I've heard, like Nina was talking about her dog knocked the phone out of her hand and broke it. That's why she wasn't able to continue her live. And I thought, man, that is wild. These animals are territorial for sure. I can't imagine an animal knocking something out of my hand. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, bro. And you are going to see a addition here probably in a couple weeks because I'm going to be dog sitting for my mom and dad. I'm going to be dog sitting their little terrier named Cricket. and Cricket is a lap dog. So while I'm doing my lives, Cricket is probably going to be all up in my personal space because she loves me. So y'all will get to see Cricket for about a month because my parents are going on vacation for about a month. So y'all will be able to see Cricket. Cricket is not my new dog. It's my mom and dad's dog, but Cricket is going to be chilling with me because I'm going to be dog sitting. She's a little terrier. And I have a picture of Cricket, so I can show you what Cricket looks like in the near future when you see her on panel. Dang, I deleted a lot of my photos on here, so it's annoying that I have to go back and retrieve them other ways. I do have pictures of Cricket though, somewhere. Oh hell, I'll just show you Cricket when she gets here. Yeah, Cricket in 12. Cricket is not a stripper, so just a little terrier dog. After that, you can have Rip for a month or so or two. Oh wow, I don't know. Cricket's gonna be a handful because she's gonna be here when I'm at work. But she's used to being by herself. I'll be able to check on her at lunch and obviously after work. And I have people coming by to check on her as well, so she won't be totally alone. Those little dogs, they love people. And if I ignore Kai, she goes crazy stuff like grab trash bags out of the little trash cans and run around the house. Yeah. My parents told me to be sure I don't have any paper anywhere around, toilet paper, anything. So I'm gonna have to really be mindful of, putting stuff up because they say she loves paper and she'll just tear it up. Yeah, Cricket the little stripper. One of the cats took my earbud after it fell out while I was asleep. When I finally tracked it down, it was inside a box. PKC. And you can put dog TV on the TV for her to watch. I put cat TV online. Hey, thank you for that. I will do that because I have a big TV. I'll put dog TV on her for her to watch it while I'm gone. Thank you for that. Because she will. I mean, she's used to my mom being there during the day. So she's used to my mom. They take naps together and stuff. My mom's older, but I will do that because that'll give her some company. She'll be able to hear, you know, possibly other dogs. Now, if you're setting me up, Glitter, that's not cool. If that dog TV is about barking and all that stuff and getting her rambunctious, and I come home and my place is destroyed, I'm gonna hunt you down. I know where you're at. Hopefully, you're not setting me up. One of mine hides my vape because it's a lanyard, and I play with her in the lanyard so sees it laying there. She grabbed it and runs off, and I can't find it. Naughty little shit. My friend said, "Do your laundry, bitch." My friend watches from time to time, see if I'm live. So he calls me or sends me messages. And that's the message he just sent me. Yeah, Cricket likes walks, so I'll have her leash and I'll take her for walks in the afternoon, in the evening. Okay, I'm just making sure you're not setting me up. No, it's not like whatever dogs like to watch. I do have to be careful on the cat TV though, because my naughty cat will jump up and try to get into the TV. There you go, PKC. You can turn on cat TV for your cats. It's crazy how many views does cat TV and dog TV live videos get. Yeah, people love those. I was looking through chat to see who said that. Yeah, I've seen people live stream their cats like all day long, like have cameras, and people literally watch those at work or during the day. They're sitting there watching cat just playing in the room, or the dogs running around, or the dogs tearing up the place. It's wild. You're right. 12, I just emailed you a video rip after a bath. All right, I'll play it if that's cool with you. That's cool with you. I'll play it. I don't mind playing y'all stuff. Let me clear my page here. And for some upcoming shows that I got planned, Drunk Turkey is going to be on my show. We're thinking maybe Tuesday night about 8 p.m. So if you enjoy Daniel, he'll be here. Um, and Detective John says I can play one of his videos. Um, and I'm going to do that probably tonight. So tonight's going to be a little trauma. If you know what trauma is, that's what tonight's going to be. So y'all might want to tune in. It's not necessarily um, something that I'm going to do very often, but I feel that it needs to be done because this individual needs to be checked. He is nothing but a grifter, and he's hurt a lot of people that I respect and love, and he needs to be checked. And everybody he brings along with him. That's his entourage. He needs to be checked. So tonight we're going to have a little bit of 12 gauge trauma. So it'll be a little fun. You know what I mean? I would need about 10 cameras. They're all over the place. Wow. Oh, your kitten name is Curtains. That's a cool name. I like to watch GT. Did you, Andrew Garrett? I really don't know a lot about Andrew, but I've heard some stuff about him. Uh-oh. Yeah, y'all better get your ice cream ready because it's going to be a good one. Doodlebug, you might want to tell Mom and some others, Arctic Fox, to come on over and hang out with us because it's going to be wild. It's going to be live. It's going to be good. Oh, I'm good for Krama once in a while. Who's going to be on here? It's a secret. Yeah, I've heard of Andrew. But I don't do Krama, but I feel that I need to just destroy this once and for all. This needs to be the end of it. Because I don't believe in what this creator pushes. And basically, I'm sick of one of the people he has on his panel lying about me. And I got to do it. I got to do it. Because you know what? Kind of like they say in this movie that I enjoy, Some Kind of Wonderful. If you're from that genre area, you know about Some Kind of Wonderful. You know about Watch. You know about how I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He was in love with Amanda Jones. Well, Watts was my favorite character, and one of the things that she says is you mess with the bull, you get the horns. And this person's about to get the horns. Yeah, lying sack of shit that he is. You're right. Sometimes it's necessary, just like your two bad actors just doing God's work. Sometimes people need to be called out for their bullshit. You're right on that. Guess you found what you were looking for. I didn't, but just as good. Just as good. Some Kind of Wonderful is my favorite movie of all time. I cannot think of what the guy's name is. I know it's Watts, it's Amanda Jones, and the guy's name is Keith. That's his name, Keith. Keith, Amanda Jones, and Watts. Watts was the one who Keith was really in love with. He didn't know it, but he was after Amanda Jones. He spent his tuition on that, on getting her like earrings, and he went out on a date with her, went all out. Watts was the driver, she was the drummer. Mention the name and they appear. Yeah. I'm not going to mention the name because this person has only came in my chat one time. The other person only came one time. And to me, they're female objectifying pieces of crap. And the same with the other person that they have up there. Eric Stoltz was in Mask. Yeah. So if you feel like being around probably about 8 o'clock Central Time, we're going to have a little bit of drama. I'm going to make a thumbnail and everything just for it. And if you want to hop on panel to say anything to this creator on your behalf, you're more than welcome. I will let you come up on panel and I'll let you speak on your behalf. If you've ever been in their chat and you feel that anybody had disrespected you from that channel, I'll give you some time to come up on panel and clear your conscience and have some peace of mind, because we all need a voice. We all need a voice. It's 8 o'clock Central, so I guess it would be 7 o'clock Eastern Time. So 8 o'clock Central, because I'm on Central Time. So if you want to come up on panel and say your piece, let's try to limit the profanity, but we're adults here and we can speak up for ourselves. The silence is over. People should be able to say what they want without being attacked in other chats. And it's Trauma Night on 12 Gauge Investigative. Hope to see y'all there. And if these individuals come into the chat or any of their people come into the chat, let them speak until they violate the rules, and then we get rid of them, right? Because we do have rules to follow here. And no, I will not be having either one of those people up on my panel. They say enough on theirs that is nothing but lies. I'm not going to have them defending themselves, lying, trying to victimize themselves to defend their actions. So, if any of you have been hurt by this channel that I showed tonight, I'll give you the opportunity to speak on your behalf. I'll let you come up on panel. And I'll let you tell those people in that chat, the moderators, the creator, exactly how you felt and how you were treated. Okay? So hopefully we'll see y'all here. Let me go ahead and set up that trauma for tonight. And y'all have a wonderful evening. Until then, Maestro, cue that music.